Throughout this book, we class a great deal of science with bad fiction. When is fiction bad, cheap, low? If coincidence is overworked, that's one way of deciding. But with single writers, coincidence seldom is overworked. We find the excess in the subject at large. Such a writer as the one of the Cornhill magazine tells us vaguely of beliefs of peasants. There is no massing of instance after instance after instance. Here, ours will be the method of mass formation. Conceivably, lightning may strike the ground near where there was a wedge-shaped object in the first place, again and again and again. Lightning striking ground near wedge-shaped object in China, lightning striking ground near wedge-shaped object in Scotland, lightning striking ground near wedge-shaped object in Central Africa. Coincidence in France, coincidence in Java, coincidence in South America. We grant a great deal, but note a tendency to restlessness. Nevertheless, this is the psychotropism of science to all thunderstones said to have fallen luminously. As to greenstone, it is in the island of Jamaica, where the notion is general that axes of a hard green stone fall from the sky during the rains. Journal of the Institute of Jamaica 2-4. Some other time we shall inquire into this localization of objects of a specific material. They are of a stone nowhere else to be found in Jamaica. Notes and Queries 2-8-24. In my own tendency to exclude, or in the attitude of one peasant or savage who thinks he is not to be classed with other peasants or savages, I am not very much impressed with what natives think. It would be hard to tell why. If the word of a Lord Kelvin carries no more weight upon scientific subjects than the word of a Sitting Bull, unless it be in agreement with conventional opinion, I think it must be because savages have bad table manners. However, my snobbishness in this respect loosens up somewhat before very widespread belief by savages and peasants, and the notion of thunderstones is as wide as geography itself. The natives of Burma, China, Japan, according to Blinkenberg, Thunder Weapons, page 100, not of course that Blinkenberg accepts one word of it, think that carved stones have fallen from the sky because they think they have seen such objects fall from the sky. Such objects are called thunderbolts in these countries. They are called thunderstones in Moravia, Holland, Belgium, France, Cambodia, Sumatra, and Siberia. They're called storm stones in Lausitz, sky arrows in Slavonia, thunder axes in England and Scotland, lightning stones in Spain and Portugal, sky axes in Greece, lightning flashes in Brazil, thunder teeth in Amboina. The belief is as widespread as is belief in ghosts and witches, which only the superstitious deny today. As to beliefs by North American Indians, Tyler gives a list of references, Primitive Culture 2-237. As to South American Indians, certain stone hatchets are said to have fallen from the heavens, Journal of American Folklore 17-203. If you too revolt against coincidence after coincidence after coincidence, but find our interpretation of thunderstones just a little too strong or rich for digestion, we recommend the explanation of one Thalius, written in 1649. The naturalists say they are generated in the sky by fulgurous exhalation conglobed in a cloud by the circumfused humor. Of course, the paper in the Cornhill magazine was written with no intention of trying to really investigate this subject, but to deride the notion that worked stone objects have ever fallen from the sky. A writer in the American Journal of Science, 1-21-325, read this paper and thinks it remarkable that any man of ordinary reasoning powers should write a paper to prove that thunderbolts do not exist. I confess that we're a little flattered by that. Over and over, it is scarcely necessary to suggest to the intelligent reader that thunderstones are a myth. We contend that there is a misuse of a word here. We admit that only we are intelligent upon this subject, if by intelligence is meant the inquiry of inequilibrium. and that all other intellection is only mechanical reflex. Of course, that intelligence too is mechanical, but less orderly and confined. Less obviously mechanical, that as an acceptance of ours becomes firmer and firmer established, we pass from the state of intelligence to reflexes and ruts. An odd thing is that intelligence is usually supposed to be creditable. It may be in the sense that it is mental activity trying to find out, but it is confession of ignorance. The bees, the theologians, the dogmatic scientists are the intellectual aristocrats. The rest of us are plebeians, not yet graduated to nirvana or to the instinctive and suave as differentiated from the intelligent and crude. Blinkenberg gives many instances of the superstition of thunderstones, which flourishes only where mentality is in a lamentable state, or universally. In Malacca, Sumatra, and Java, natives say that stone axes have often been found under trees that have been struck by lightning. Blinkenberg does not dispute this, but says it is coincidence, that the axes were of course upon the ground in the first place, that the natives jumped to the conclusion that these carved stones had fallen in or with lightning. In Central Africa, it is said that often have wedge-shaped, highly polished objects of stone described as axes been found sticking in trees that have been struck by lightning, or by what seemed to be lightning. The natives, rather like the unscientific persons of Memphis, Tennessee, when they saw snakes after a storm, jumped to the conclusion that the axes had not always been sticking in the trees. Livingston, last journal pages 83, 89, 442, and 448, says that he had never heard of stone implements used by natives of Africa. A writer in the report of the Smithsonian Institution, 1877-308, says that there are a few, that they are said by the natives to have fallen in thunderstorms. As to luminosity, it is my lamentable acceptance that bodies falling through this earth's atmosphere, if not warmed even, often fall with a brilliant light, looking like flashes of lightning. This matter seems important. We'll take it up later, with data. In Prussia, 2 stone axes were found in the trunks of trees, one under the bark. Blinkenberg, Thunder Weapons, page 100. The finders jumped to the conclusion that the axes had fallen there. Another stone axe, or wedge-shaped object of worked stone, said to have been found in a tree that had been struck by something that looked like lightning. Thunder Weapons, page 71. The finder jumped to the conclusion. Story told by Blinkenberg of a woman who lived near Kulsbergen, Sweden, who found a flint near an old willow near her house. I emphasize near her house because that means familiar ground. The willow had been split by something. She jumped. Cow killed by lightning, or by what looked like lightning, Isle of Sark near Guernsey. The peasant who owned the cow dug up the ground at the spot and found a small green stone axe. Blinkenberg says that he jumped to the conclusion that it was this object that had fallen luminously, killing the cow. Reliquary 1867-208. A flint axe found by a farmer after a severe storm, described as a fearful storm by a signal staff, which had been split by something. I should say that nearness to a signal staff may be considered familiar ground. Whether he jumped or arrived at the conclusion by a more leisurely process, the farmer thought that the flint object had fallen in the storm. In this instance, we have a lamentable scientist with us. It's impossible to have positive difference between orthodoxy and heresy. Somewhere there must be a merging into each other, or an overlapping. Nevertheless, upon such a subject as this, it does seem a little shocking. In most works upon meteorites, the peculiar sulphurous odor of things that fall from the sky is mentioned. Sir John Evans, Stone Implements, page 57, says, with extraordinary reasoning powers, if he could never have thought such a thing with ordinary reasoning powers, that this flint object proved to have been the bolt by its peculiar smell when broken. If it did so prove to be, that settles the whole subject. If we prove that only one object of worked stone has fallen from the sky, All piling up of further reports is unnecessary. However, we have already taken the stand that nothing settles anything, that the disputes of ancient Greece are no nearer solution now than they were several thousand years ago. All because, in a positive sense, there is nothing to prove or solve or settle. Our object is to be more nearly real than our opponents. Wideness is an aspect of the universal. We go on widely. According to us, the fat man is nearer godliness than is the thin man. Eat, drink, and approximate to the positive absolute. Beware of negativeness, by which we mean indigestion. The vast majority of thunderstones are described as axes, but Meunier, La Nature, 1892-2-381, tells of one that was in his possession said to have fallen at Gardia, Algeria, contrasting profoundment, pear-shaped, with the angular outlines of ordinary meteorites. The conventional explanation that it had been formed as a drop of molten matter from a larger body seems reasonable to me. But with less agreeableness, I note its fall in a thunderstorm, the datum that turns the orthodox meteorologist pale with rage, or induces a slight elevation of his eyebrows if you mention it to him. Meunier tells of another thunderstone said to have fallen in North Africa. Meunier, too, is a little lamentable here. He quotes a soldier of experience that such objects fall most frequently in the deserts of Africa. Rather miscellaneous now. Thunderstone, said to have fallen in London, April 1876. Weight, about 8 pounds. No particulars as to shape. Tim's Yearbook, 1877-246. Thunderstone, said to have fallen at Cardiff, September 26, 1916. London Times, September 28, 1916. According to Nature, 98-95, it was coincidence. Only a lightning flash had been seen. Stone that fell in a storm near St. Albans, England. Accepted by the Museum of St. Albans. Said at the British Museum, not to be of true meteoric material. Nature, 80-34. London Times, April 26, 1876. That, April 20th, 1876, near Wolverhampton, fell a mass of meteoric iron during a heavy fall of rain. An account of this phenomenon in Nature, 14-272, by H.S. Maskelyne, who accepts it as authentic. Also, see Nature 13-531.